Hello and welcome to ETX Covered. I'm David Littman. This historic special session of the Texas legislature is over, which means it's almost time for the next one to begin.
The Senate has accomplished and passed every bill on that call, and it passed it over to the Senate. Unfortunately, our colleagues in the House could not receive those bills because there's not a quorum.
With dozens of Texas Democrats in Washington instead of Austin, the House couldn't meet. That prevented a vote on a wide-ranging election reform bill and everything else Governor Greg Abbott asked them to consider. Republican State Senator Bryan Hughes from Mineola wrote that elections bill and has led the charge from day one. He made a quick visit to East Texas this week, and I caught up with him to talk about that, the other Republican priority bills, and yes, college football.
Senator, obviously been busy. The most important thing in Texas politics right now seems to be college football, and you're in the middle of it. What do you make of the idea that Texas could leave the Big 12, its impact on the state, and why the legislature should be involved?
Today, Texas has 5 teams in a major conference. That's important. We don't want to end up with only 2, right? That just makes sense. Most of us are football fans, but even if we don't care about college football, we're talking about millions and hundreds of millions of dollars in economic activity for the state. When you think about games and TV, and you also think about recruiting. You talk to these folks at the college level, and they'll tell you on the academic side that athletics are what drive the budgets, what help us do better academically as well. So it's so important that all of Texas, the state of Texas, be considered in this process. So we had a hearing in the Texas Senate just to look at everything, make sure we know how every school is going to be affected in all the different regions of the state. It's a big deal.
And are there going to be more hearings, do you know, or do you think this was just a one-time?
We don't know. The Texas House would like to take action, but of course they don't have a quorum right now because some of our Democratic friends are in D.C. But on the Senate side, we did have a hearing, and we invited some House members to join us who are concerned about the issue. So we'll see. Conversations are going on. Again, we just want to make sure that all of our Texas schools are taken care of because that affects the whole state.
All right. So give me a sense of what this special session was like for you, being part of the Senate who was still there and doing some work and knowing that ultimately nothing could actionably happen.
Well, it's been frustrating. As you say, over on the Senate side, we've had a quorum. We still have a quorum. We have enough members to do business. Some of our Democratic members went to D.C., but enough stayed in Texas to do their jobs that we could conduct business. So yes, we passed the election accessibility and security bill. We passed the social media free speech bill, help for our retired teachers, children in foster care, property tax relief, bond reform. You realize now across Texas, we have a handful of judges in urban areas who are releasing violent felons on personal recognizance bonds. That's going on today. So we've passed bills in the Texas Senate to deal with all that. But you're right, because the Texas House cannot take action without a quorum, it's been very frustrating. And so we're hoping that when this special session ends on Friday and the governor calls us right back, probably on Saturday, we're hoping we'll have enough Democratic members of the Texas House present for them to do business.
Do you at least feel like you were able to lay groundwork for the next session in these hearings that y'all had?
We do. Every time we had a hearing on one of those bills, every time we debated the bill on the floor, when we passed the bill, we brought attention to these issues because these are things Texans care about. The right to vote is so fundamental. It's too precious not to be secure. And so people care about that. And so having hearings in the House where hundreds of people registered their position on the bill, having hearings in the Senate where hundreds of people registered their position, that's important. So we'll go through it again. This is the process, and we'll stay as long as we have to and come back as many times as we have to get these bills passed, because they're important bills for Texas.
And what's your sense of what the House Democrats will do? We've heard some say they're going to come back next week for the next session. We've heard some say, no, we're staying out as long as it takes. Do you have a sense?
I've heard they're coming back, and I realize that the Democrats in the House are individuals. They each have to make their own choices. I have heard from enough people that are concerned about folks not showing up for work and walking off the job. So I know many of the Democratic members, especially in suburban areas, maybe in swing districts, less partisan districts, maybe in the Rio Grande Valley. I've heard a number of them have constituents who are upset and who want them to come back to work. So we hope they will.
And you answered this to a degree, but I'll ask it anyway. If holding off on the election bill were the key to bringing them back and getting the rest of the agenda passed, would that be a worthwhile trade for you?
We need to pass every bill on the agenda. The right to vote is important. Free speech is important. Helping our retired teachers, helping children in foster care, property tax relief, these are all important, and they all need to get passed.
And for some of the House Democrats have talked about there being room for negotiation. We've heard some say no. Talk to some Republican members, your colleagues, who say, no, there's no time for negotiation on the election bill, that time has come and gone. What's your position on that?
This bill has gotten better at every stage of the process with input from Republicans, Democrats, groups all across the spectrum. This is a good bill. It protects every Texan's right to vote, and it's strong. If there's something that needs to be tweaked, needs to be adjusted, we are always open to that. But we're not going to make bad law. We're not going to negotiate and make bad law just to get people to show up for work. That's not how it works.
Is there anything that has not been addressed so far that you believe should be on another special session call?
I believe the governor has addressed the important issues. Now, he's talked. Another issue he has raised is sports. In our sports in high school and K through 12, I think everyone understands that we don't need to have boys competing in girls' sports. It's a difficult issue, but at its core, it's pretty basic, pretty fundamental. The governor has talked about that. That's an important issue, needs to be addressed, of course.
We're seeing the coronavirus cases spiking here in Smith County. Cases are up 18 times what they were just a month ago, according to Net Health. Anything that you think the legislature should be talking about as far as pandemic response?
Well, I talked to a physician, a very talented physician in the public health sector at a university system in Texas, and we saw this coming. This is kind of like a flu season. As folks are getting sick, we're having to watch it, making sure all the resources are there. You know, the vaccine's available for folks who want it. No one's going to be forced to take the vaccine. It's there for those who want it, and we're going to make sure that our healthcare providers have the resources they need. Ultimately, we trust Texans to make wise choices to take care of their own health, and they'll do that.
More of my conversation with Senator Hughes after the break. Hear his thoughts on the lawsuit against another bill he led through the legislature, the heartbeat bill.